Yeah, just out of curiosity, you sent me that email saying that people die unexpectedly every
Yeah.
day. What do you mean by that? That was like very, 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 very,
Well,
very
no,
random.
like if I don't hear from somebody, could be that he died.
It does typically happen. And I was just like, why? So I was like, when we come on the show, I'm just kind of curious, like, what was that? Where'd that come from?
That's why I
But
was inquiring because I'm in touch with people all over the world. Sometimes people
yeah,
just disappear, and I never
yeah,
find out why. So that was like
yeah,
my sense of gallows humor.
Don't hold back how you feel. Welcome to the platform for the misunderstood and creatives alike. So roll a joint and pour a shot. You're listening to the Dash It Out podcast, the show that brings your after hours talk to daytime. No wrong opinions and all unfiltered. With your host, Vic Tor.
welcome to another episode of the Dash It Out Show, the show that brings your after hours talk to daytime. On this episode, our all-new co-host, Mr. Jim Marshall, is a discoverer of hetero unknown natural phenomena, which is greatly aid in the understanding of people, from which he created a revolutionary practical philosophic system called septemics. Intriguing. His areas of expertise includes psychology, philosophy, theology, parapsychology, science, engineering, mathematics, law, literature, history, music, organization, metaphysics, military science, political science, human potential, physical culture, and education. That's a list. And he's here with us today on the Dash It Out Show. So, thank you so much for coming on the Dash It Out Show. I know there was a bit of a scheduling confliction, a lot of craziness that was going on. Yeah, just out of curiosity, you sent me that email saying that people die unexpectedly every day. What do you mean by that? That was like very, 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 very,
Well,
very
no,
random.
like if I don't hear from somebody, could be that he died.
It does typically happen. I had a younger sister who committed suicide by setting herself on fire. So I completely understand how one day they can be there and the very next day they can't. But that was just a bit random, And I was just like, why? So I was like, when we come on the show, I'm just kind of curious, like, what was that? Where'd that come from?
So that's why I was inquiring because I'm in touch with people all over the world. Sometimes people just disappear, and I never find out why. So that was like my sense of gallows humor.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's like, that's one of the reasons why I was so intrigued to having you on the show, because you're a man who don't just have knowledge, okay? You have wisdom, and which that you're going to share with us today. I'm talking about your book, Septemics, Hierarchies of Human Phenomena. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. Well, I just want to repeat something you said to make it clear to your listeners. I am the discoverer of hitherto unknown natural phenomena, which greatly aid in the understanding of people, from which I created a revolutionary practical system called septemics and published into the book, Septemics, Hierarchies of Human Phenomena. Septemics is a philosophical science based on the fact that many phenomena related to people occur in a sequence of 7 levels. Literally, the word septemics means of or pertaining to 7. Septemics comprise a collection of scales or sequences, each of which breaks down various human phenomena into a hierarchy of 7 steps. There are 35 such scales, each of which is unique, and together they span the spectrum of human experience, by which I mean any problem, dilemma, difficulty, situation that any person has that has anything to do with people can successfully be analyzed by one or more of these scales. So this is extremely useful to people.
Okay, so when you're saying scales now, I'm just going to go a little bit further into it, okay? When you say scales, and you can refer, based off the human, so is there a certain scale in which I fit in, or would it be a certain scale that somebody else fit in, or is there like, is it like a stage in life that each individual as a human being going through, and we happen to be stuck at a certain scale?
Every human being is at some level on every. Now, of course, you can ignore that data if you want, but it's much smarter to use it. Isn't it good to know where you are? Because not only do you know where you are when you find your level, you know where you're headed if you're going to succeed because it's the next level up. Each of these scales is a roadmap for success in the corresponding area. If I may, I'd like to tell you the names of the 35 scales because then you know exactly what subject matter is being analyzed by these 35 scales.
Okay, sure, shoot.
Okay, so there are 24 individual scales, meaning they apply primarily to an individual. These are the individual scales. The scale of basic purposes, the scale of personal choice. Excuse me, I read that wrong. The scale of personal influence, the scale of choice, the scale of permeation, the scale of thought, the scale of identity, the scale of evaluation, the scale of motivation, the scale of control, the scale of stopping, the scale of scholarship, the scale of literacy, the scale of human ability, the scale of memory, the scale of spiritual identity, the scale of mental deletion, the scale of aberration, the scale of physical fitness, the scale of justification, the scale of belief, the scale of equanimity, the scale of attack, the scale of conflict, and the scale of reaction. And these are the group scales, meaning they apply primarily to a group. And the scale of relationships, the scale of life spheres, the scale of government, the scale of civilization, the scale of survival, the scale of management, the scale of exchange, the scale of communication, the scale of allegiance, the scale of sexuality, and the scale of politics. Any one of these scales by itself can dramatically improve the life of the user. And combined, they give you a way to understand, predict, and manage human affairs to a degree hitherto unattainable by most. This is
Okay,
universally.
so quick question. Can somebody have more than one scale? Can someone be on more than one level on these scales? Because there's a lot of things that you mentioned that can make up somebody's personality, their day-to-day life. Maybe not just one scale, but a compilation of many. And which you said this can actually, could pertain to somebody's life and where they're moving or where they're at right now in life. So what do you say to somebody who may have accomplished or who have predominantly of most of these scales, who's been on most of these levels and have most of these scales in their chart, in their makeup? Where would they fit?
Wow.
Okay, so first of all, you asked me 3 or 4 different questions there. I'm going to try to remember them all. First of all, what I read to you was the names of the scales. Each of those scales that I read off to you has 7 levels in it. Every human being is at some specific level on every scale. It's like your blood pressure. Everybody has a blood pressure. If you don't have any blood pressure, you're an object. You're a corpse.
Dead inside.
So everybody you deal with. Now, what is that person's blood pressure? Well, when you go into the doctor's office, they measure it right away. And they know your blood pressure today is this. Now, tomorrow it might be a little bit different. These 35 areas of life apply to all people across all demographics. And since every person is at some level on every scale, it would be very smart to find out what level you are at on each scale. And I'll tell you why. Every time you correctly identify the level of any person on any scale, whether it's yourself or another person, you have a realization. You say, I understand why my parents can't get along. Or, now I see what's wrong with Gertrude. She's at level 6 on this scale. You see, there's always an insight. That is one of the ways that you know you found the right level. If you find a level and nothing happens, you found the wrong level. Because when you find the right level, the light bulb will go on over your head on that specific context. So now let me tell you how this is generally beneficial without going into specific cases, and I'll do that later. I wrote this book to help people. I have had a lifetime of helping people.
Oh,
Each
yeah.
of these 35 scales provides the user with an infallible way of determining the salutariness or beneficialness of any group, individual, or activity. If the individual, group, or activity moves persons up the scale, it's beneficial or positive. If it moves them down, it's detrimental or negative. So I'm giving you a yardstick by which to manage and measure human affairs, which is an entirely new concept. Secondly, once you find out what level you or another person is at on any scale, that in itself is enlightening and beneficial. As I said, when you find the correct level, let's say you look up, you want to know, where am I on the scale of reaction, right? So you study it and you say, I see I'm at level 3. And you will have realizations. You'll say, that explains why I get along with Joe, or whatever it is. So you are then a little bit smarter. Now, next, once you know the actual level of a person, whether it's yourself or another on any scale, you can improve that person by moving them up one level at a time. So, for example, if you're at level 4, you can move yourself to level 3 if you make an effort. If you're at level 4, you will not be able to move yourself to level 1 or 2. It's too steep a gradient. It's not the next thing. Now, think of it this way. If you're on the first floor and you want to go to the 5th floor, one way or another, you're going to have to go through the second, the third, and the fourth. Whether you take the stairs, the escalator, the elevator, or go outside the building and use a rope ladder, you're still going to have to go through those levels. So, no level is ever skipped. Sometimes there could be a context where you go through a level so quickly that you don't realize it, but you always go to the adjacent level. So if you're at level 4, you can only go to 3 or 5. And that's true for all the scales. And that's because this is natural law. These scales are true in the same way that Newton's 3 laws of motion are true, in the same way that the laws of thermodynamics are true, in the same way that the periodic table is true. People have occasionally asked me, what book is your book like? And having gone to school for 28 years and read a lot of books, I have to say in all candor, I don't think there's ever been a book like this before. But I can tell you this. Each one of these scales is expressed in what you could describe as a table or a spreadsheet. In other words, there's this whole body of data about this area. And table is very similar to the periodic table of elements that's used all over the world in science. So if you've ever seen the periodic table, when you look at it, you get it right away. You say, oh, this makes sense. There's horizontal, there's vertical. Helium, hydrogen is here, and then helium's here, and then lithium comes in here. And it makes a lot of sense. And so you never really forget it as you go forward in science. So every student of science in the world uses that table in whatever language they speak. And that is what these 35 tables are like. Each one of them is a periodic table for the corresponding area. So, for example, I mentioned the scale of basic purposes. Every human being has one of 7 basic purposes. When you find out what that is, it changes your life. Because what happens is you say, I see what my basic purpose is, and you throw out the other 6 levels. They're not for you. You're at this level, and this really makes everything in your life come into focus. So then, if you want, you can try to move yourself up to the next level. Now, in that particular scale, that will be a tall order, because most people spend an entire lifetime at one level of that scale. So you have to understand there are general scales and specific scales. Now, a general scale is like the one I just described, in which once you find the level, whether it's for yourself or another, you're done. It has nothing to do with context. Now, you can move yourself up. You can try to move yourself up, but that's all you can do with it, as opposed to a specific scale. A specific scale has a context. So, for example, let's take the scale of motivation. It doesn't make any sense unless you have a context. So you could say, what is my motivation toward my wife? What is my motivation toward my boss? What is my motivation toward my pastor? What is my motivation toward my son? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you could use this hundreds of times. And you could reverse the vector and ask, what is my next door neighbor's motivation toward me? What is my girlfriend's motivation toward me? What is my grandmother's motivation toward me? See, and you can use it another 500-600 times. You could go through everybody you've ever known, find their motivation, your motivation toward them, and their motivation toward you, and plot it on. And every time you spot it, you'll have a realization. So let's say you're thinking about some guy you knew in high school. What was his motivation toward me? And you know the guy, and so when you study the scale, you can say, oh, I see, it was this motivation. That explains why he did this, this, and this. See? And so you're a little smarter now. So this is a way of improving insight. Now, of course, in order to use the scales, it requires some insight, but the more you use it, the more insight you gain. So the second time you use it, you're more insightful than the first time you used it. And the third time you use it, you're more insightful than the second time you used it. So this is a snowball of insight. So the more you use the system, the smarter you get. And after a while, you walk up to some guy on the street, right? He's standing there waiting for a bus. You look at him, and you can see where he is on a certain scale. And what I'm telling you is, this is not difficult to do. It's obvious. People tell you their levels. Just listen to somebody talk. He will tell you his level. Of course, before you evaluate this, you have to know the scale. See, but if you study the scale and you listen to the guy talk, he will tell you his level. And I'll give you an example of that. I know the basic purpose of every president of the United States, going back as far as Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and many of the presidents previous to that who I studied, such as Washington and Lincoln and Jefferson. Now, why Franklin Delano Roosevelt? Well, since Franklin Delano Roosevelt, we have had films and tape recordings of all the presidents. See, if you want to go back and study Ronald Reagan, there's not only there are hundreds of books about him, you can look at video, you can watch his speeches, and he will tell you who he is if you listen. So you have to shut up and listen. This is extremely useful, and I'll show you what I mean. When Obama ran for president, I had never heard of him. He had only been in the Senate for 2 years. And all of a sudden, I'm hearing in the news this guy with this funny name is running for president. I don't know anything about him. Now, the people in Illinois knew about him because they sent him to the Senate. But in the other 49 states, most of us had no idea who he was. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to find out. See, that's an unusual circumstance. Like when Joe Biden ran for president, he'd been around for 50 years. I knew all about him. But Obama, I had to conduct a study. So I did. I went out of my way to listen to him speak, to watch his body language, to see what is this guy about? And he would tell me, since I knew the, and I spotted his basic purpose. And that told me what he's trying to do all the time, whether or not he's successful at it. So that informed me as to whether or not I wanted to vote for him. Now,
and what was your conclusion?
No, don't ask me that, because I tell everybody, never tell the level of any living person on any scale. It's counterproductive and unethical. Now,
oh my God, bro.
I give examples of deceased persons. I give Thomas Jefferson's basic purpose. I give George Washington's basic purpose. I give Abe Lincoln's basic purpose. So those who know those people can look at it and say, okay, I see what he means here. It's educational. But a living person, I would never do that. And people often ask me straight out, oh, tell me my level. No, not going to do that. If you want to know your level, get the book. It's available hardbound and softbound ebook. It's easy to get. It doesn't cost you a lot of money. And just read it and you will get it.
funny because
What's that? Go ahead.
no, I was about to say that was funny because one of the questions I was going to ask was how have your discovery helped other people? And you said that other people ask you all the time, what are their levels? And it's funny because a part of me was thinking to myself when you may mention previously you would know somebody level from just them speaking to you. And I was curious to ask off the jump because we just started, we just talked, we just met. Um, like, would you happen to know my level? But you just said not to do that is unethical. So that's cool. That's been ruled out. That's been ruled out.
Right.
But yeah,
That's right.
I'm intrigued. I personally would get the book just to figure out my level and have some insight to probably my everyday life, family and friends that's in my life. But you said not to like tell nobody. Why not? Why not telling nobody their level? Why won't you tell nobody their level? Not you per se, but if somebody, my audience purchase your book
I'll tell you
and
for a
somebody
couple of
asks
reasons.
them,
I'll tell you why you don't do it. Number one, because you never notice the wife goes to the husband and says, "You know what's wrong with you? You need a better job. You don't make enough money." He doesn't like that. People don't want to hear that. Now, she could say, "Joe, come here. Look at this book I found, Septemics." And he could look at it and say, and figure it out himself. You see, when he figures it out, he'll have a realization. If you tell him, he doesn't get that opportunity to have the realization. And the realization is what makes this work. Because the guy says, I just realized I'm an alcoholic. I didn't know that. See? Well, that opens the door for him to stop being an alcoholic, doesn't it? There are
true.
people, every night they drink a 6-pack of beer, they pass out on the couch, right? And say to them, "Don't you think you're an alcoholic?" "Oh, no, I'm not an alcoholic. I can stop whenever I want. I go to work the next day." That person's an alcoholic. So you don't tell him that, you see? But if he gets this book and studies it, he'll figure it out probably.
Yeah.
Now,
It's the power of
let me just
realization.
say,
I got you.
right, let me just say one sentence to bring this into focus. The data in this book is vital for every human being and can help you to achieve your goals faster and easier by explaining what might otherwise seem to be inexplicable or random. So most people go around life just have no clue what the hell they're seeing, what's going on, or anything. Like if you talk to most guys, they'll tell you, "I have no idea what's going on with women. I don't know what they think. I don't know why they do that." Most guys are like that. Now, I can understand it, but if they gave the guy the book, right, and he's going out with this girl Mary, and he finds her on every scale, by the time he finishes that, he knows her better than she knows herself. And he'll know exactly what she's going to do before she does it. I know because I've been
That's
using this for decades.
and it's been proven successful. Otherwise, you wouldn't be, here on the Dash It Out show, preaching your truth, spreading your wisdom. And yeah, that's interesting. It kind of remind me a little bit of like astrology. Astrology is also built on science and whatnot, and how you can like pretty much determine someone's personality by based on their
Mm-hmm.
birthday, place of birth, and X, Y, and Z. But at the same time, it's almost similar to like you study psychology, so it's like it's similar to that, which is very intriguing because it's almost like a blueprint, right? It's almost like a
Mm-hmm.
blueprint to not just help yourself, but to be able to get an insight into the world. And I really do love the fact that you share knowledge on as far as, not reading for somebody because in a sense, you taking away instead of adding to it. And that's very beneficial and very enlightening. So for everybody on the Dash It Out show that's listening to this, you get the book, Septemics, do not feel compelled to tell anyone their level in a
Or
way
your
it
own
may
level.
or your own level because it may
Yeah,
inadvertently backfire, and that's the last thing
that's
you
right.
want to do. It's
That's
almost
right.
like in Spider-Man how Uncle Ben told Peter Parker like with great power comes great responsibility. In
That's
this
right.
case, this is a book, this is power, okay, and it comes with a level of responsibility. So I want everyone to just take away from that this is a level of power. Knowledge is power, and this is
Yes.
power that's about to be bestowed upon you. So take it and use it wisely, okay?
Right. So since you mentioned astrology, let me compare that because I know a lot about astrology. Here's the difference. Astrology gives you a tendency. For example, somebody who's born in the year of the tiger, he tends to be reckless. That doesn't tell you that he's going to be reckless in a specific context. This is different. This person is at that level, okay? Whether he realizes it or not. It's just like a GPS. It tells you where you are, okay? There is no ambiguity about this. So I understand astrology. I appreciate it. But it's very different. All it gives you is a tendency. You have to what, like for example, if I know somebody's in Aries, I know how Aries behave, and I'm going to be alert for certain Aries behaviors. So I'm not caught unawares. If they do something that's very Aries, I say, well, okay, he's an Aries. But that is not specific. So, for example, I'll give you an example of how to use this so you see how specific it is. Let's say you have a couple that's been dating for 2 years, right? And they're talking about getting married, right? Common scenario. Wouldn't it be smart for those people to know, why does this person want to marry me? I mean, isn't that a smart question to ask? I'm not saying ask the other person. I'm saying in your own mind. Wouldn't that be a good thing to know? Right? Guy's going out with a girl. She's talking about getting married. He should think, why does she want to marry me? See, that's a smart thing to ask of yourself. So you turn to the scale of motivation. There are only 7 motivations. He knows this girl. He's been around her for 2 years. So he studies it. And as he's studying it, he's thinking about her, right? So maybe he decides she's at level 1, which is love, the highest motivation of all. Well, that's a good reason to marry somebody for some people. He might say, well, she loves me, I'm going to marry her, right? But maybe after he studies this, he realizes, come to think of it, I think the reason she wants to marry me is because I drive a Maserati, I own a 60-foot yacht, I fly my own Learjet, I live in a $15 million condo, and I have $20 million in the bank. That's a different motivation. That's level 4, money. That's money motivation. He might not want to marry. He might say, hey, I don't want to marry somebody who wants me because I'm rich. I want to marry somebody who loves me, right? That would be like a common response. So, but that night might not necessarily happen. He might say, well, I really like this girl, and even though she likes my money, I'm still happy to marry her. Okay? So,
Right.
but it could also go the other way. He could say, you know what? Now that I realize she's after my money, I don't want to marry this person. She's a gold digger. I don't want to
No.
marry a gold digger. Right?
Yeah.
Now,
No,
if
you're right.
in that case, in that second case where he decides he wants to break up with her, right? Don't think he will be bummed out by that. He will not. He will be relieved. He'll say, thank God I figured this out now before I wound up owing her $20,000 a month in alimony. You see? He just dodged a bullet. So now there might be another guy who looks at the same woman, sees what her motivation is, and says, what do I care? I don't mind marrying a gold digger.
Shut up
Did you ever
and take
notice
my
how
money.
many rich, ugly guys are married to beautiful young women?
The eye
Did you ever
candy,
notice
of
that?
course. Yeah, it's the arm candy, the eye
How does,
candy, you
how does
know?
that work? Like sometimes I look at
Um,
some guy, some famous
like
person.
Donald Trump and Ivana Trump,
Well,
Ivanka
when
Trump.
Donald Trump was
Yeah,
young,
just saying.
he was a very handsome person.
Yeah, I
He
mean,
did
yeah,
gain
but
he did gain some weight because he's like 78, but when they met, he was still very handsome. But there are lots of people I look at and I see, how does this guy wind up with this beautiful wife? I'll tell you exactly how it happened. The 23-year-old beauty queen gets a diamond ring, a pearl necklace, a Corvette, a mink coat, and a credit card. So she's happy. The
that's it.
guy gets a 23-year-old beauty queen for a wife. So he's happy.
Yeah,
Well, if she comes to him and says, honey, I want to go to Vegas for the weekend, he says, okay, here's $5,000, have a good time. And when she comes back, she thanks him. You see? So what I'm saying is this is very personal. There's no judgment involved in this. It's knowing the truth about somebody. Like, I'll give you an example. I met a woman some months ago. I'm a single guy. Gorgeous blonde, gorgeous. Like, could be a movie star, right? So, we're interacting. She was obviously interested in me, or we wouldn't be in, right? So as we're interacting, I'm listening to what she says, how she says it, and I'm starting to say, she's at the bottom of this scale. She's at the bottom of this scale. She's at the bottom of this scale. And at some point I said, what am I, crazy? Am I going to get involved with this woman? I mean, she's pretty, yeah, but her behaviors are very questionable, okay? And that's because I know the scales. I dismissed her. I just said, bye. And she said to me, who do you think you are? She was probably the first guy who ever did that to her because she's so beautiful. And I did not say to her the truth, which is, I'm the guy who knows septemics, which told me this is a dangerous person. So, this book, if you get it and read it, absolutely will prevent catastrophes, dilemmas, bankruptcies, indictments, fist fights. Okay? Because when you see somebody who's at the bottom of these various scales, you say, well, I don't want to be around this guy. Goodbye, have a nice day. That's what I say to those people. So, for example, Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler was at level 7 on the scale of basic purposes. His basic purpose was to destroy. Now, a lot of people will say, how could that be somebody's basic purpose? Well, I'm sorry, it is. It's not a lot of people, but he is one of them. Now, I have to tell you, I was a serious student of military science. And when I studied World War II, which I'd been doing since I was a teenager, I looked at the things he did. And I often, knowing military science, there's like standard military science. They've been teaching the same thing for hundreds of years. There's certain things you do, certain things you don't do. So he would do these stupid things. And I'd read about it and I say, why would he do that? That doesn't make any sense. Now, so I walked around for years puzzled. Why did he do that? Hermann Goering told him, if the Soviets get into the war, we will lose. And he invaded them anyway. So when I realized that his basic purpose was to destroy, then it all made sense to him. He was destructive. He wasn't only destructive to the Allies, he was destructive to the Wehrmacht. He was destructive to Germany. He was destructive to his own family. Yeah. Okay? Destructive guy. So when you get a destructive guy in charge of a country, that's what you get. 60 million people died. Okay? And that's why the Allies, mostly Churchill and Roosevelt, said, this guy's got to go. Okay? And they took him out because they saw what he was. Churchill was saying for 10 years, we can't let this guy stand. There's going to be a big war if we don't stop this guy, which is exactly what happened until Churchill finally became the prime minister, and then he prosecuted the war against him. So there's a lot of really useful data here. So let me give you an example how to use this. Let's say your best friend is having trouble with his relationship, right? His name is Fred. Every time you see Fred, he complains about his girlfriend. She's doing dope now. She crashed the car. She doesn't clean the house. She is disrespectful to me, blah, 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 right? So you get tired of listening to this. So after a while, you say, Fred, come over here. Let me show you this. And you open up the book to the scale of relationships, and you put it in front of his face. Now, he's probably going to say something like, you mean there's a scale of relationships? And you say, yes. This relationship that you've been complaining to me about for a year, where is it on this scale? Guaranteed he's going to want to know that because he's having a lot of trouble. And you just opened the door for him. So when he looks at it, in a matter of seconds, I mean like 15, 20, 25 seconds, he will find a bracket. He will say something like, well, I can see right away 1, 2, and 3 don't apply to us because that's the top of the scale. We're having a lot of trouble. See, he got it down to 4. Then you say to him, go ahead and read it, and you can get it exactly. So he reads it, he comes back and says, well, now that I read it, I can see this relationship is a level 5. That's not so good. That's near the bottom of the scale. No wonder we're having a lot of trouble. See? And then you say, well, the book tells you how to move up to the next level. Really? Sure, if you get the book, you can work with your girlfriend, you can improve it. But before we do that, let me show you this. And you open it up to the scale of sexuality. He's having trouble in this area, so he's going to want to see this. You mean there's a scale of sexuality? Say yes. You don't have to tell me if you don't want. But for your own illumination, where are you on the scale? Guaranteed he's going to want to know that. He's going to look at it. And whether or not he says it to you, he's going to find a bracket. All right, in his mind is going to be something like, well, definitely not 1 or 2. I don't even understand those. And it's definitely not 6 or 7. That has nothing to do with us. So it's got to be like 3, 4, or 5. So you got it down to 3. And he said, well, go ahead and read it and you can get it exactly. So he reads it. You can help him as a tutor. Comes back and says, well, I can see I'm at level 4. And he'll have a realization that explains X, Y, and Z. And I could keep doing this for another hour. In other words, in a relationship like that, you could have 10, 12, 15 different scales that all apply that he could use. And by the time he finishes that, he's going to understand this relationship very well. And he's going to know what to do about it.
And that's amazing. I love how you broken it down, because it definitely grasps. It's more of a visual breakdown, which was pretty great. Mental visual breakdown, which is pretty amazing because, it kind of just clarified and summed it all up in the nutshell as far as a good takeaway and how these principles can be applied. But I'm gonna go ahead and move it along just a little bit.
Okay.
Are you up for playing a game?
Depends on what the game is. If it's Russian roulette, no.
No, not this time. But it's called the dash stash. Now, what it is pretty much just a hypothetical scenario in which you would fill in the blanks. Okay, it's kind of like my way of, getting to know my co-host and for my guests to get to know you as well. Even though that we've been talking and sharing knowledge, and with you sharing your knowledge, and I was taking away key takeaways from septemics and the great, very strong ideologies that you're throwing down. Let's play this game called the dash stash. Now, once again, it's just a hypothetical scenario in which you would just fill in the blank. I would start it off. Okay? The best things in life, blank. And I would probably say the best things in life are free food. And I'll remind you, it don't have to be serious, but if you want to be serious, by all means, go ahead. So I'm going to ask you,
I'm reminded of the old song from the 30s, the best things in life are free.
Okay, there we go. Best things in life are free. Okay, second question. I don't want to be human no more. I want to be an
angel.
Nice one. I love it when you blink, and I hate it when you blink, but I like it when you do it like blink.
Okay, let me see if I can remember this now. Say it again.
Okay.
Say it again. This is a lot of information.
Yeah, I love it when you blink, and I hate it when you blink. But I like it when you do it like blink.
I don't think I understand this question. I mean, I understand the first two, but I'm not sure how the third part fits in.
Okay, so let me go ahead. I'm gonna go ahead and do something. Okay. I love it when you say what's up, and I hate it when you ignore me. But I like it when you do it like, what's up, man? It don't have to necessarily be serious. Yeah.
So presumably this is something hypothetical about somebody that I know, right? That I'm thinking of?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so I like it when you smile, and I hate it when you cry, but I like it when you tell me what's going on.
Okay, see? There we go. I like it when you let me know what's going on. See, there we go. There we go. Hypothetical. Okay. It's not serious. It's just to get you out your head for a little bit. So now this is another one. Okay, I think you may like. Okay, I'm a trillionaire, and I bought this.
I'm a trillionaire and I bought an island.
Woohoo! Oh,
Yep. Now that's definitely what a trillion will do. Okay. Okay. Last but not least. Okay, I like to feel blank in the morning and blank at night.
I like to feel refreshed in the morning and relaxed at night.
Okay, there we go. Don't we all? Don't we all? But yeah, that kind of just sums it up for the dash dash. And like I said, once it is just hypothetical scenarios, nothing too serious, just enough to kind of like lighten the mood, loosen the tension a bit, and kind of just get everyone just refreshing. I definitely feel as though we covered a lot. I wish that we can cover a lot more, but that's the reason why most of this information will be listed in the description as far as your books. Your book Septemics, where everyone can go pick up. I think that would be a great read. I'm definitely gonna get me a copy myself. I'm a connoisseur of knowledge, and I feel as though with you and you're just a well-rounded guy. Okay, you have a lot of degrees. Typically, like you say, you went to school for 28 years, and you seem to you have a lot of knowledge that I think will be beneficial for not just yourself but for others around you as well. Anyways, even though everything's gonna be listed in the description, can you go ahead and let the audience know where they can find all your information and all your works, and if there's any works that you working on now?
Okay. Well, I want to invite your listeners to my website, which is septemics.com. septemics.com, where you can see what many readers have said, what many journalists have written, what the reviews are. You can read sections of the book itself. You can listen to a pre-recorded introduction to septemics, or if you prefer, there's an essay there which explains it if you prefer to read. If you go there, there's a lot of information, and everybody's welcome to check it out.
Okay, there you go. Heard it here. All that information will be linked in the description below. The Dash It Out fam, this is our amazing co-host, Mr. Jim Marshall. Buddy, it's been a pleasure for you coming on the show. And once again, hey, if you ever want to come back through and share some more knowledge, definitely be here. I'm definitely down. And like I said, I'm definitely going to cop my copy of my book because I would really like to know what's going on in my day-to-day life and also just to see where I'm at. And yeah, so that's about it. That concludes this episode of the show. Follow us on social media. And here we go. That's it. It's a wrap. Until next time, I'm your host, Vic Dash. This is our co-host, Mr. Jim Marshall. And everyone have a great one.